It's the first week of October. You all know what that means. It's Beast Wars week. That's totally a thing and not just a joke I made one time. And what's more Beast Wars week than talking about a Beast Wars reissue? First up, before we get into the figure, I want to say that I know you don't care. And normally, I would not bother talking to you all about this because I know you don't care about the packaging. But this time, I think it's kind of necessary to cover this simply because the packaging is really important to this as a re-release. And it's kind of the point to some people this time. Because if you're nuts like me, you are very much probably buying this just as much for the packaging as the figure. And you will probably be torn between hanging this on the wall and opening it to have your childhood figures back. So the packaging is something that needs to be discussed this time. This is a pretty close facsimile to the old blister card that the Beast Wars figures used to come on. The first thing you are going to notice when handling this is that the card they used for it is flimsy. My memories could be wrong, but I do remember these things being a lot sturdier. But yes, if you are too young to know this is actually what Transformers boxes used to look like back in the 90s. The card art is pretty right, except for the modern text bubbles that have every language under the sun on them, because back when these first came out, that was not a concern. At least not to Hasbro of America. And the art of the character was always based on an upgraded look for the toy that wasn't based on the show, so there were always very big differences between what the character on the card and the one on screen looked like. They even got the multiple pictures on the blister right, where they had the beast mode, robot mode, and what passed for an action pose shown. One thing that's cool is that they actually put the Kenner logo on the box, because little known fact about the original Beast Wars figures that was obviously staring in everyone's face for all these years is that Hasbro had just acquired Kenner before starting the Beast Wars line and didn't actually bother designing the toys themselves, instead pawning that duty off to Kenner. So, if you're a Beast Wars fan, you actually have Kenner to thank for your childhood toys and not Hasbro. There is one critical flaw that the casual-eyed observer will not notice looking at this. The actual plastic bubble is wrong. These actually used to be near perfectly round to more match up with the shape of the eye on the card. And you may be like, why are you telling us this? It's pointless. Well, one, if you are trying to buy an original carded example, that's one way that you will be able to tell from a distance if it's actually a re-release and it may or may not be worth the asking price. But two, this might matter to someone who wants this to hang on the wall. A really nerdy detail is that the straps holding in the figure are not twist ties, but I'm probably the only person on Earth who would ever think to care about that. And the back of the card is an absolute nostalgia bomb. If you look at it, you can see large portions of this were meant to be cut out, like the character card and the directions, because yes, that is how they used to do the directions. It's hilarious how this used to be considered added value in the days before boxes themselves were understood to be collector's items. Now, people wouldn't dream of making a box that you intentionally have to destroy, though I did still have to cut through the plastic to get at this. Looking at the stats on the card, they are all above average, but I'd say they're all wrong as a result. I mean, Rattrap is probably the physically weakest of any of the characters in the show, so his strength is too high at a 6, but I'd argue that his intelligence is too low at a 7. Rattrap wasn't a genius or a mastermind like Rhinox or Megatron, but this is a guy who lived and died on his wits, so I think an 8 is in order for him. Then I'd like to know just who gave him an 8 in speed? Really, Rattrap, 8 in speed. He's slow as dick, quite possibly the slowest of all the characters. Even Rhinox had a better land speed than him. This only makes sense for his transmetal form. Like, this boy is pulling a 4. He's agile, which this might be taking into account, but in terms of ability to cross distance, this boy is a 4, if I'm being generous. And then his firepower is a 6? I swear these stats were all chosen at random. You better be giving this man's an 8 here too. Sure, he doesn't have the strongest gun of any of the Maximals by a lot, but this lad's loaded with bombs. Now that I'm done chewing your ears off with crap you don't care about, let's talk about the actual figure. Yeah, this is what the original Rattrap toy looked like, very much different than the way the character ended up looking in the show, and very difficult to get standing. The majority of his mass is located above his knees, which, you know, usually true for everyone, but this has exceptionally light legs, and while the feet are relatively large, they just don't have enough weight to counteract all of that. And yeah, this really is what the original Rattrap toy looked like, in all of his dorky proportions, and I couldn't be happier than I am. Yeah, this doesn't look like the show, and yeah, by modern standards, that'd be an egregious flaw, but back in the day, you didn't expect the toys to look right. You expected close enough. And Rattrap here is making out better than most of his comrades. This looks more like the character it's trying to be than most others. The level of creative liberty most of the show models took was no joke, and the vast majority of Rattrap's details made it through almost unscathed. The lower legs are near perfect, though their coloring is a bit off. The backpack is the right shape, the chest head is correct, and even the slots in his arms are pretty directly interpreted by the show. And the one thing that absolutely made it over is the exposed silver brain. It's pretty much the right shape and everything. So yeah, the accuracy overall is pretty good. The proportions, not so much. He's got tiny legs and dweeby little arms, where his shins are too long and his forearms are too short. His crotch is gigantic and mounted too low, Rattrap rocking that BDE. He's got tiny little fists and shoulders that are weirdly low, and you know what? I just can't be mad at this. This is a figure of a bygone era. I'm mad when I see stuff like this now, because we all know they can do better now. This is exactly what it should be. It's probably more expensive than it should be, but when the G1 Optimus Prime without trailer gets re-released, it's always like 4 times the price this was, so this price feels at least a little merited. One thing I find hilarious about this lovely little rat is just how much it dwarfs the Kingdom figure. I mean, back when I was a kid, this was considered really small and simple for Beast Wars. But put the two of these together, and this guy comes across as a juggernaut. He is the Super Rattrap! Anyways, the head sculpt is weird. It has the brain I already mentioned, and if you flip it around, you can see that it kind of ends different, but at least it looks right from the front. Honestly, I know I said there's no mutant head, but turning this thing around, and I'm not sure. It kind of looks like the little crab or octopus man with a perpetually open mouth. I kind of only imagine him being able to breathe heavily and talking like this. How you guys doing, you okay? If this was a villain, he'd be terrifying to have snuck into your base. You'd be all alone, till you were suddenly very cognizant of the fact that he was there. As from a dark corner of your base, you just hear. Crabface, is that you? Shit! It's cast in gray like the rat parts, which is basically the exact inverse of the way it went in the show. He doesn't have Rattrap's face as we understand it, though he does have the red eyes. And is it just me, or does he have a samurai's helmet's side plating? So this head is probably the biggest departure from the show model. Or, I guess it's the other way around, but at least it's more accurate than a lot of heads from the show. And it kind of looks cool taken on its own. Beast Wars was definitely trying something new with their robot designs. This guy comes with only one accessory, kind of two, but it's pretty cool. They are stored in his side flaps, and I wonder if these are the inspiration for his demo charges. Anyways, they combine to form his gun, and it's also not accurate to the show model, or I guess the show isn't accurate to it, but I can at least see that they were close. And I have no memory of this thing, probably because as a child I instantaneously lost it. Posability on this is atrocious by modern standards, but this isn't a modern figure, and for the time, this was actually great. As funny as this might be to say now, since the modern opinion on ball joints is kind of a negative one, these were considered a posing revolution back in the day. Figures could not move like this before, so this then new type of joint allowed for a lot that was never possible before. And you know what? I kind of get why ball joints have a bad reputation, because as a kid I hated ball joints. They popped off all the time, and while it could have been because I was manhandling them so much, they were still such a pain to get back on. I was always sure there had to be a better way of doing this back then, and 2021 talking, it turns out I was right. I think here they've either fixed the problem with the material change, or I'm just an adult now who can modulate their force better. But I've had no poppages since getting this. It's got a ball-jointed head, which is the one wobbly and loose joint on this guy, but it has more than average range with high levels of side to side and tail down, ball joints for the arms, with one shoulder getting out to a 90 and the other one not, ball-jointed elbows that pull a little more than a 90 and work as wrist rotations if you have the arm out straight, no waist, ball-jointed hips that get out to the side just fine, behind not at all, but up like a Las Vegas dancer, and ball-jointed knees that pull a 90 and act as ankle rotations or broken legs. And that's it. Transformation on this guy is incredibly complex. Are you ready for it? I don't think you are. There. Did you not see that? Here, let me do it again. No? A third time. Fourth. How would I show you this 137,639 times? Yes, Rattrap was one of the first Beast Wars figures, and the original gimmick of the line was that all the smaller characters would be based on the same body type that would allow them to automorph. As a kid, I kind of hated this, but as an adult, I do appreciate what they were doing, and it is kind of a serious complexity, at least from an engineering standpoint, at least for the time. And the rat mode is meant to look mean, but I think it looks cute. Honestly, as a kid, I never realized how much of an absolute bastard Rattrap is supposed to be. I really liked him back then because he was a rat, and rats are awesome pets. If you ever get one, it will be one of the best pets you ever have. Friendly, social, intelligent, they're just amazing. And they have one critical flaw. They live 2 years. So, if you get one, get ready to become insanely attached to it, and then in the blink of an eye, it's gone. God, I wish they lived longer. Anyways, this silly little thing brings back so many memories. While I did think the transformation was lame even before I could actually handle a real transformation, I did still always love the results. They were probably the one thing I could reliably transform, even if I was prejudiced against the way they did it. And holding this thing again just brings back memories of fiddling with the old version of this guy from the top bunk of my bed, under the yellow incandescent light from a not LED bulb. So this reminds me of a simpler time before I was fucking 30. As far as rats go, this is solid. It's something of a brick, and don't go looking at the underside, but I think this looks reasonably real if it weren't for the weird mouth full of sharp teeth. So by the standards of today, this is kind of terrible. And if you're a modern buyer, you may want to steer clear of this, unless you're curious to see how things used to be. As much as it doesn't live up to what I expect of anything that would come out today, I can't even dream of calling this a bad figure. It does what it set out to do. And hell, this is still better than most of the Cyberverse line ever was, until they finally decided to start making figures worth a damn. If you are an older collector like me, you will probably be thrilled by this thing. This is a very faithful re-release. The box has some off details, but it's very close, and the figure is exactly what you want. I'm thinking I might even buy a second one just to keep in the box so I can hang it on the wall. And that's about the best praise I can give this. And that's not half of what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know you know what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.